Hello, this is Ivan Alvarez, and I'll be walking you through the itemized deductions worksheet, part of our 2011 tax organizer. First, let me just briefly give you some background about the itemized deduction and the standard deduction. Our revenue code allows us to take a standard deduction of $5,800 if you're single, $11,600 if you're married filing joint, $8,500 if you're head of the household, or $5,800 for each person if you're married filing separately. Now, if you're married filing separately, you cannot itemize. Either both taxpayers, both of the folks who are married filing separately have to itemize, or both have to take the standard deduction. You can't pick and choose. With that being said, the itemized deduction allows you to claim a deduction that exceeds the standard deductions, so long as you have the documentation to support some of the items that are allowed as a deduction. The first item is medical expenses. Now, for medical expenses to be deductible, you only are allowed to deduct the excess of 7.5% of your adjusted income. So, on page 1 of the tax return, we add up all of your income. Then we'll multiply that number by 7.5% or 7.5%. Only the excess of that number you will be able to deduct. For most taxpayers, they have to incur very significant medical bills in order for them to be deductible at all. And then, even then, your deduction will not be as great as you would probably like, since you're only able to deduct the excess of 7.5%. So, in an easy example, if you have adjusted income of $100,000, you are only able to deduct the excess of $7,500. So if your medical expenses were $10,000, you're only able to deduct $2,500, which is the excess of 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. If you're not sure whether your expenses will be deductible, go ahead and list amounts that you've paid for dentists, doctors, equipments, eyeglasses, hospitals, insurance, prescriptions, etc. here, along with any miles that you drove to receive medical care. And there's a breakout because the rate changed as of July 1. So please provide us with the number of miles that you drove from January 1st to June 30th, and then from July 1st to December 31st. Another box that I'll be talking about is the charitable contribution. Anything that you donate to charity is generally deductible. Now, the only thing with charity is if you receive any benefit as a result of your charitable contribution. And the example of that, let's say you donate to your local public broadcasting station. Any tickets that you receive, let's say to the opera, you would have to deduct the fair market value of those tickets from your contribution in order to arrive at your net charitable contribution. So if you made a $500 charitable contribution to PBS and they sent you $100 worth of tickets to the opera, the difference, or $400, would be deductible. The other thing to note here is anything that is over $500 that is not in cash, we will need very specific details about those contributions, since for those specific contributions we will have to provide additional details to the Internal Revenue Service. Lastly, did you transfer any IRA funds directly to charity? And if you are a volunteer in a charitable organization, what miles did you drive on their behalf? Next, I'll be moving on to taxes paid. In taxes paid, there's an array of taxes. Don't worry about anything that's reported on your W-2 that relates to taxes paid. This is not what this is asking. This is basically asking for very specific taxes, such as real estate taxes, personal property taxes, if you received any refunds for property taxes, or any foreign taxes paid. Again, whether a tax is deductible or not, let us help you make that determination. Provide us with as much details as you possibly can, but just keep in the back of your mind that any taxes that you paid that are based on the value of an asset generally speaking, are deductible. And please list those taxes individually. Second, if you kept receipts for sales taxes paid, mark yes or no. And if you purchased a car, plane, boat, or home in 2011, mark yes or no. And please provide us with the specific details about the taxes that you paid. Next, I'll be talking about casualty and theft losses. Did you have any losses that or casualty losses in 2011? Tell us yes or no. Next, some of those losses could potentially be deductible, but please provide us with the details for some of those losses. Miscellaneous itemized deduction. Now, anything here must exceed 2% of your income in order for it to be deductible. So, generally speaking, you don't expect to receive a big deduction for this. And some of these expenditures relate to dues that you pay, investment expenses, job-seeking expenses, legal fees that you may have incurred, safety equipment that you may have purchased because of a job, subscriptions to professional journals or publications, tax preparation fees, tax planning fees. My fees are deductible. However, they're deductible in the year that they're paid. So for example, for this year's fees, which you will be paying in 2012, it'll be deductible in your 2012 tax return, not your 2011 tax return. Any tools, uniforms, union dues that you pay, that is subject to a miscellaneous 2% deduction. So please provide us with as much details as you possibly can. And the other thing I want to point out is any gambling losses. Gambling losses you will not be able to deduct only to the extent of gambling winnings. So you have to have gambling winnings in order to be able to deduct the gambling losses. But if you do have gambling losses, please go ahead and provide us with that information. Any information that is provided on a K-1 or a partnership return, please provide us with copies of those K-1s or those partnership returns, and don't try to provide us with a specific number here on this box. We'll take care of that. Next, let's talk about interest paid. Interest is generally deductible on your home, anything that relates to a home equity loan. So please provide us with documentation for those interest that was paid for your main home, second home, any points that you paid, any home equity loans, or any investment interest. Any mortgage insurance premiums, please provide us with the amount and the dates. And then at the bottom, there's a box for other deductions or questions. If you have a question about something that could potentially be deductible and you're not sure, please write down this question here in this box, and then we will go ahead and do some research and be prepared to give you an explanation when we meet. Next at the bottom, there's some additional very specific adjustments. Read through this list and please provide us with documentation for some of these numbers. Or more importantly, if you have any questions, please circle those numbers so that we know that you have a question about that. Some important items are self-employed health insurance deductions. Please let us know what you paid for that health insurance, whether that was paid by an S corporation. That's important for us to know. If you had any student loan interest that you paid, any tuition and fees, etc. Please provide us with some of that information so that we can see what's going to be more advantageous on your return.